A day of racing at one of the fastest super speedways in the world, and we go caution free in the final stage, no wrecking to the checkered flag. Did we just go into the Twilight Zone this weekend? Hey there, race fans. It's Race 8 Top 5 with me, Frank 5. Talladega Super Speedway. She's the biggest, she's the baddest, she's the boldest, and she sure as hell is the fastest. The 2.66 mile Super Speedway has always provided entertainment for everybody watching on television or at the track live. Of course, Talladega Boulevard, we're there, it's always a party. It's like the NASCAR version of Las Vegas. What happens in Talladega Boulevard stays there. And this weekend, we saw some relatively clean but very productive side-by-side racing at this great super speedway. And one driver broke a winless streak after coming close so many times the past few times at super speedways, broke through and got a win yesterday. Let's get into all that happened at Talladega. Number one, Cindric comes out on top at a super speedway. Austin Cindric picks up his first win of the 2025 season by winning yesterday's Jack Links 500 at Talladega, edging out Kyle Larson, William Byron, Noah Gragson, and Chase Elliott for the victory. It's about time that Austin Cindric got another super speedway win. If you all remember, his first ever NASCAR Cup Series win came into Super Speedway back in 2022, and it was the Daytona 500, and he was a rookie at the time, but he ran up front all day long in that race, competing with the likes of Brad Keselowski, Ryan Blaney, Kyle Busch, Joey Logano, Martin Truex Jr., the rest of the competition, you name it. He ran up there all day and ran like a pro and was able to lead a lot of laps and win that big race. Then his sophomore campaign, he took a little bit of a step back, wasn't really performing as well as he would have hoped for, but then last year, he was able to win a Gateway Motorsports Park, a race where he ran up in the top 10 the entire race and benefited from his teammate running out of gas coming to the white flag. Cindric stole the victory and was able to win the race and make it into the playoffs. And yesterday's win breaks a 30-race winless streak and locks himself into the playoffs as well. Summarizing Cindric's season so far has been kind of, average for the most part. It hasn't been terrible by any means necessary. The Daytona 500 this year, he, like his two teammates, Joey Logano and Ryan Blaney, was one of the fastest cars and one of the guys that you had to beat. Unfortunately, he got caught up in some of the late race incidents. He was able to finish inside the top 10, but his chances of winning another 500 fell a little bit short. He had another great car at Atlanta Motor Speedway, but once again, things did not go his way. But then the following weekend, things took a turn for the worse, big time. Early in the race at Circuit of the Americas, he got into an incident on the straightaways where he hooked the 10 car of Ty Dillon, sending him around with cars coming from behind, having to take evasive maneuvers to not hit the 10 car. And NASCAR dubbed, because of the way Cindric was upset with the 10 car at the time and turning him, that they handed him a massive point penalty for his actions on the track and said, if you do this again, you will be suspended for a race. They let him go a little bit easy by just giving him a points reduction penalty instead of, suspending him for race like what happened with the Bubba Larson incident or Chase and Hamlin incident in previous years. But ever since then, Cindric has just been kind of, average, not finishing lower, I think, than 25th, but at least enough to finish sometimes in the top 10 or top 15, top 20. Yesterday, he was able to put it all together. He didn't really make a whole lot of noise yesterday, even though I suspected that he would maybe find his way up towards the front of the very end of the race, given how fast the Penske cars are with those Roush Yates engine powered by Doug Yates himself. And yesterday, in the final stage of the race, after kind of hanging around for the most part in a lot of the race and running in the middle of the pack, Cindric's crew got him off pit road on that last pit stop under green flag faster than anybody else. I mean, he was able to leave the pits with guys behind him, mainly the Hendrick cars, but he got an excellent pit stop that put himself up towards the front of the field where we haven't really seen him at all for most of the race, but he was able to get up there and kind of decide which lanes to go and which lanes to block and everything. Even though we did have a challenger up there at the very end with Ryan Preece in the 60 car, which I'll get into in a moment. But despite all that, Cindric was doing everything in his power to try to at least slow down the momentum of the 60 car and wait for the guy behind, the 5 car of Kyle Larson, to kind of wait to give him a massive push while Larson was kind of dragging the brake before he could set up a massive run. The Hendrick cars couldn't really do anything to kind of move out of the way at the very end because of the way that the 2 and the 60 were kind of holding those lanes there because they wanted a Ford to go to to victory lane. It didn't matter who went to victory lane as long as a Dark Horse Mustang was the one across the start-finish line in first place. At the end of the day, it was Cindric, and what helped him on the final lap, as he was still running side-by-side with the 60 car, coming into the tri-oval, there were 2 cars in front of him that had pit road speeding penalties, Josh Berry and Kyle Busch. The draft that Cindric picked up, coming out of the tri-oval behind those 2 guys as they were closing in on them rapidly, heading to the checkered flag, benefited Cindric than it did the 60 car. Cindric was able to carry that extra draft and lunge a little bit forward and got across the start-finish line first and got him in the playoffs. And he was so pumped. He was so happy with the performance that his team did. He credited his team's pit crew, and I tip my cap to those guys. Getting them from the middle of the pack up to the front of the field, but that fast pit stop at the very end where they really needed gas and not tires because the tire wear was not really a problem at all yesterday, and it really hasn't been at Talladega in a while. Excellent work by the number 2 crew. And Cindric, now that he's in the playoffs, I want to see more consistency, obviously, from him going forward with running up at the front. It's kind of a little bit surprising, honestly. We expected Joey Logano or Ryan Blaney to be the first Penske car to win this year. We didn't think it would be Austin Cindric, but once again, the young man is talented. He has a lot of potential in this sport, and he picks up his 3rd career win yesterday, locking him into the playoffs. 3 out of the first 4 years of his Cup Series career, he's in the playoffs. Not bad. Hopefully there's more consistency and more production from him heading forward. But a great job yesterday by Austin Cindric and the 2 team with that fast pit stop at the end. Got them to the front and got him to victory lane at Dega. Number 2, 2 fast forwards disqualified. Yesterday, Ryan Preece and Joey Logano originally finished inside the top 5. As mentioned, Ryan Preece was the one challenging Austin Cindric for the win at the very end of the race, considering he was able to jump from the bottom lane where he was running 4th at the time up into the high side coming off of turn number 4. Preece was able to get side-by-side with the 2 of Cindric, and they duked it out. Preece led at the white flag lap, but Cindric, of course, at the checkered flag, got the draft of those 2 cars in front of him, running the bottom, and propelled Cindric in front of the 60 car of Ryan Preece, who gave a really good effort on the track yesterday. And Joey Logano, who has still had a rough year for a defending 3-time Cup Series champion, only has 1 top 10 to show for this season. Yesterday, it looked like he came out there with a 5th place finish, which was good momentum for him going forward, and a runner-up finish for Ryan Preece. Even though he fell short, it could have been something. It's still something to smile about considering how well they performed this year. Well, those finishes were the case for them, finishing 2nd and 5th, but then came post-race inspection, folks. The number 60 of Ryan Preece and the 22 car of Joey Logano failed post-race inspection because Ryan Preece 3 shims instead of 2 on his spoiler. These were spoiler infractions that these guys violated. Preece had 3 shims instead of 2 on his spoiler, and Joey Logano missed a spoiler bolt, and that might have been in part because of the racing and the bump thread that's going out there. And you know, sometimes there's those little parts and pieces that hold the spoiler together. You think these guys, it just holds on there and just, sticks and nothing falls off. Well, with super speedway racing and the way these guys bump draft, anything can happen and you can lose some parts and everything. So those 2 teams were disqualified from yesterday's race, and it does suck considering all the effort they put into their cars yesterday to run up at the front and can try to contend for the win yesterday. I mean, Ryan Preece, again, if he had beaten Cindric to the line, this penalty obviously would have stripped it from it anyway. Cindric would have been the winner regardless. But it definitely sucks considering how well that Ryan Preece has performed this year. It's been one of the big surprises, I think, of the season. In his first year with RFK, has done a phenomenal job for a team that just expanded 3 cars. And then Joey Logano, who's trying to get some momentum on his side because he only has the 1 top 10 of the season that came at Martinsville. Other than that, he has had good cars, but not a lot of luck to show for it. And it's really unfortunate. And these 2 teams did release statements saying that they accept the penalties, they will not appeal the disqualifications, and it's showing maturity and realizing that we made mistakes, we'll make sure that these will not happen again, we go forward. And sometimes some teams try to appeal the penalties, like remember Parker Kligerman thought he won the truck opener at Daytona this year. Truck failed post-race inspection due to something in the rear of the truck. They appealed the penalty, but unfortunately did not win the appeal. Sometimes if you think you can try to appeal a problem with your car that leaves you disqualified and try to win that appeal back, most of the time, NASCAR is the one that says, you violated the rule book, we hold the upper hand, you do not. Now again, some teams in the past have won appeals, like Hendrick Motorsports have won appeals in their past, and this year Joe Gibbs Racing with Chase Briscoe from his penalty to Daytona, he got back all his points eventually. But these 2 teams, they accept the penalties, they will continue going forward. But it definitely sucks considering how well the 60 of Preece and the 22 of Logano ran yesterday. Disqualifications after originally finishing in the top 5. It's a big bummer. Number 3, solid day from Kyle Larson on a super speedway. That's right, with the disqualification, of course, with the 60 car, Kyle Larson finished runner-up in yesterday's race at Talladega. I know, Kyle Larson in the top 5 of super speedway? That doesn't make any sense. Again, did we step into the twilight zone this week, folks? Every time we go to a super speedway, we've been waiting and waiting and waiting for Kyle Larson to have a breakthrough and win a super speedway. But most of the time we think that he's going to come close. He's getting involved in a wreck, not of his own doing. I mean, if you remember his early Cup career when he's with Chip Ganassi at the time, he had rotten luck at Daytona and Talladega, not getting the results he had hoped for. Then over time, he's kind of gotten better with it, but sometimes bad luck will strike his way. Yesterday, that was not the case. They had a very fast number 500cars.com Chevrolet. They ran up at the front. They won stage number 1 with a little bit of assistance from the Chevy cars of his teammates Byron and Elliott and the 47 of Ricky Stenhouse Jr. to kind of work his way past the Toyotas of Denny Hamlin and Bubba Wallace. It was good execution by the bow ties to get Larson the stage win. Stage number 2, he was up at the front of the field, trying to, get up there and get some stage points, which he did. And also, he had to overcome a speeding penalty after he won that stage. But that was, during the pit stop under yellow before we get ready to start stage number 2. So it really didn't affect him that much. But, he got some stage points in stage 2 and just kind of hung around the middle of the top 10, 12 for a lot of that race. And towards the end, he found himself up at the front of the field trying to challenge with the 2-car of Austin Cindric for the win, hoping that if the moment came for him, he would try to vault up to the top and help out his teammates, Byron and Alex Bowman, in the closing laps. But when the bottom lane got such a good run through turns 3 and 4 with under 10 to go, the 60 car took that advantage and shot his way to the outside thinking, I could try to win this race, and I don't want these bow ties, so I'm going to go up there and just try to separate the Chevrolets from having an advantage against us Fords. And that kind of put Larson at a disadvantage. And at the time, he's like, either have to drag the brake and try to push the guy in front of me for the best finish possible, or you're going to try to wreck the guy. And Kyle Larson will not wreck anybody. That's not in his driving motto, and it's really not in anybody's driving motto at all. So, again, respect Kyle Larson for, just kind of holding his lane and running towards the very end of the race and accepting a top 5 finish. I mean, he was very pleased with the performance. It just takes luck and execution to put yourself in position sometimes to win these races or come away with solid results. And yesterday, it worked in Kyle Larson's favor with the stage win and the stage points he accumulated to get a second place finish for a guy that already has 2 wins this year. Eventually, hopefully, he will break through and win a super speedway race. He's close. He just needs luck to go his way. But to come out there with a second place finish for Kyle Larson, a guy who, again, has had a rough record at super speedways, that's nothing to be disappointed about. Something you got to be very happy about. Number 4, early exits for some key contenders. Yesterday at Talladega, we had 4 guys that I expected to be contending for the win in the closing laps of yesterday's race, taken out in stage number 1. The first incident happened in the middle of green flag pit stops after everybody was just kind of minding their P's and Q's despite running 4 wide early on for the most part. Everybody was starting to come down pit road with the manufacturers' teams. The second group that was trying to come down pit road, Brad Keselowski, who has had a rough start to his 2025 season, has really had no luck at all. No top 10s, not even a single lap led. A guy that we all thought would be contending for the win at a track where he's won it 6 times, as much as Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Jeff Gordon. He was trying to come onto pit road, but had some contact with the 8 car of Kyle Busch. They both collided as they were slowing down. They both went around, and unfortunately, poor Ryan Blaney, a former 2-time Talladega winner, 3-time Talladega winner, had nowhere to go and gets clipped at the last second of the right rear wheel by the 6 car, damaging the front of the 6 and destroying the right rear wheel of Ryan Blaney. It took both Keselowski and Blaney out of the event, and it's disappointing. It's disappointing for Ryan Blaney. The guy has had such fast cars this year, but can't seem to catch a damn break. I mean, that's his 4th DNF of the season. He's had 2 engine failures. He's had another wreck at Vegas, and now this. What does this guy have to do to get some luck and try to win a race? The speed's there. The cars are there. It's just the luck is not in his favor. And I don't understand this. It's so mind-boggling to see one of our defending Cup champions in recent years have this amount of bad luck when they've had such good cars. I mean, he was trying to split the middle and try to avoid that wreck at high speed, but the last second the 6 clips him, and around goes to 12 with the right rear wheel damaged and out of the race. I mean, I'm surprised that they didn't even take an effort to take that car back to the garage because Blaney was sitting in the car at the time. He didn't bother to go back and fix the tow link with the new damaged vehicle policy rules we've updated this year. Kind of disappointing, but maybe it was a little more damage than I expected it to be. But a tough exit to both Blaney and Keselowski, guys that I thought were going to be in the hunt for the win at the very end of the race. But they were not the only ones. Literally, a split second after we restarted the race, after that caution, Christopher Bell, who was leading alongside Chris Buescher on the front row coming off of turn number 2, Bell has teammate Denny Hamlin right behind him. He taps him, and not even at full speed, the 20 car, after the taps, gets a little out of control and turns dead left down the track, and Chris Buescher's nowhere to go, and both of them head to the inside wall, especially when the inside safer barrier wall pops out. They hit it extremely hard, mainly Christopher Bell. That front leg just, it made me clench my teeth, but it also shows that safer barrier walls, thank goodness for those. Safety, even the sport that we have right now with the speeds that these guys are racing, safety is of the utmost importance, and if we didn't have safer barriers right there, it could have been way worse for Christopher Bell. But he took a nasty hit front end to the safer barrier wall. Chris Buescher hit with the left side driver's door. It wasn't too significant of a hit. I mean, he was just like, oh, that sucks. Thankfully, both drivers are okay, but two guys that I thought would be contenders for the win also knocked down that. And Scott Graves, the crew chief for Chris Buescher, was not happy with what Denny Hamlin did right there and said, kind of called him out on Twitter saying, you got that Progressive Insurance, mind if I file a claim? He's really upset about the actions that Denny Hamlin did. But, I mean, I don't think Denny Hamlin meant to do it intentionally. It just happened. But you gotta kind of go a little bit easy on the bump drafting, especially coming off the corners. You cannot lug bumpers or bump a guy coming off the corners. That's where the cars, even with sometimes that these cars are handling relatively well, they are unbalanced when they're coming out of the corners. That's where they are the most aerosensitive. And unfortunately, that incident took out two more key contenders, and it just really, really sucks, especially when all four of those guys have had really good super speedway records and winning races. And of course, Christopher Bell won Atlanta this year and said, I love super speedway racing. I think he took it back yesterday after that early exit. I mean, I'm glad he is okay, and so too is Chris Buescher. But unfortunately, those two guys were not able to show what they had in their cars after those awful hits that they took yesterday. Really tough break for all four of those drivers getting knocked out of the race that early in the field. And number 5, solid racing with not a lot of cautions. Aside from those two wrecks that we saw yesterday in stage number 1, the other two cautions we had yesterday with stage breaks, end of stage 1 and stage 2. Other than that, we were pretty much relatively clean and green for a lot of the race, which is very uncanny at Talladega. Yes, in the past we've seen some of these guys take it easy, even though they're running 3 wide and sometimes 4 wide up at the front of the field, where they're, kind of taking it easy and doing some fuel saving, but don't get aggressive until the final 20 laps of a race. Yesterday, these guys, even running 3 wide and 4 wide, literally 4 laps into the race, was very, very hectic. And a lot of us thought, okay, this is the fuel saving mode. Well, according to some people, including SiriusXM Radio's Mike Bagley, who was calling the race yesterday on MRN, was tracking the telemetry of these guys, 95% of the time during those segments where they was early on to a run, these guys were in the throttle and not, really hardly using the brake. Maybe some of the guys towards the back of the pack that were riding to try to avoid possibly any big incidents or maybe saving fuel. These guys were kind of going at it yesterday. Now, of course, there are some challenges with this car when trying to generate a third lane without some guys at the front just trying to drag it off and try to save as much fuel, allowing the third lane to form up at the top of the racetrack. But that side-by-side action yesterday, all race long, with no major wrecks, and the final stage being caution-free and then running clean and green to the checkered flag side-by-side, even though the second-place guy got disqualified, I tip my cap to the drivers yesterday for putting on a sterling performance by running side-by-side all day long from 188 to 196 miles per hour and not wrecking. You don't have to wreck all the time at super speedway racing, particularly Daytona and Talladega, to make it a good race. Sometimes a race without a lot of cautions and big wrecks is still great racing as long as the drivers are giving it their all. And I felt like that these guys did yesterday. When the Toyotas got up toward the front of the field with Hamlin and Gibbs and Briscoe and Reddick and Bubba, those guys, kind of controlled some of the pack because they got up to the front, stayed hooked up, and were kind of going at full throttle, never dragging the brake. And this happened during the final stage of the race. The rest of the pack, obviously had to keep up, and they were like, if we start saving fuel, these guys are going to start to pull away even more. Even though that last pit stop didn't work in the Toyota Sabre, even though they were bunched together when they got back on track, somebody, I think it was Ross Chastain, that kind of checked them up and split them up and prevented any of them from having a chance of getting up at the front end of this race. So any Toyota fan that's upset with Ross Chastain, probably still upset today, but that's how Super Speedway racing goes. And yesterday, again, we saw a very entertaining race. People complain the third lane, you can't really form up there. But again, a lot of those guys, if they tried to get up in that third lane at the very end of the race, they were going to get shuffled, and they didn't want to do that. I think some guys at the back tried on the final lap, but I don't think it was maybe Ty Dillon ran out of gas, maybe because they didn't get the tank full of fuel and they needed to make it to the end of the race. So that kind of hurt the third lane's opportunity to try to get up there. But once again, a race to the finish with no wrecks whatsoever. That's very impressive driving by the competitors out there. They race each other respect, because the other races this year, the Daytona 500 and the Cup race at Atlanta, we saw great racing, but the wrecks towards the very end put a little bit of a damper on the event. Yesterday, them being clean and green to the end with no wrecks, I think is a very, very positive sign. And hopefully we can have more of that going forward, even though these guys got to get their elbows out and got to get aggressive. You could do that without wrecking a guy. So I tip my cap to the drivers for putting on a very solid, clean race for the most part yesterday. Yesterday's race was also the end of an era for one of NASCAR on Fox's members. Director Artie Kempner, who has been with NASCAR on Fox since the beginning of 2001 when NASCAR and Fox came together with the new TV rights deal at the time. It started out with the Daytona 500. He's directed many, many Cup races throughout his entire life. He's directed some Super Bowls as well for Fox. This weekend was his final race as a director for NASCAR on Fox after 31 great years with the sport and with Fox. Later this year, he's going to be transitioning to ESPN to help out with Monday Night Football coverage. So, Artie, we wish you all the best, and we thank you for all you've done with directing NASCAR on Fox throughout the years. And we look forward to whoever is going to take the mantle now, and hopefully they provide some excitement and, direct some really good races for NASCAR on Fox. But we wish you the best, Artie. We thank you for all you've done for NASCAR. We hope you still stay in touch with the sport. We wish you all the best, and we look forward to seeing what Monday Night Football broadcast will look like this year under your direction. So thanks again for the memories, Artie, and best of luck in ESPN. Now we're off to mile-and-a-half racing at Texas Motor Speedway. And I know that track has been kind of a little bit of an eyesore for drivers over the past few years, as well as the fans when it comes to the racing and everything. But last year's Texas race actually was one of the best ones we've had in quite some time. The side-by-side action, the comers and goers, yes, there were a lot of cautions, but we did see some fairly entertaining racing to the point where NASCAR got to see Chase Elliott score his most recent win. We're trying to see if he could break through there and win next weekend. Or will somebody else, like Denny Hamlin, who came short last year, Brad Keselowski, who finished runner-up and needs a win to get his luck turned around, or somebody that really needs to get some luck and get to victory lane, like a Joey Logano or Ryan Blaney. I think Texas Motor Speedway with this car that we have has made the racing in Texas better. We'll see what happens next week. We'll see if they can put on a show. So I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week. Subscribe, like, and congrats once again to Austin Cindric and the 2 team on an impressive win at Talladega. Have a great week, everybody. Let's go racing!